Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webcast, Talent Wars, Weaponize Your Engagement and Turnover Data, sponsored by Kantar TNS. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that this webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI credit and also can be used for SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. After the webcast, you will receive an email from HR.com within 1 to 2 business days. It will include the certification credit information. You can also log into HR.com and go to your View My Credits page, where you can see the credits that you have received. If you have any questions today for our presenters or for HR.com, please type them into the Questions tab on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will follow up with you. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to our presenters from Kantar TNS.
Thank you, Kathy. Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Spade with Kantar TNS Employee Insights. I'm going to introduce your two speakers to you today. First with us here, we have Paul Quant, our Director of Consulting Operations. Paul has a double master's in industrial organizational psychology and quantitative methods with over 15 years of extensive field experience consulting for Fortune 500 organizations as well as small and medium-sized global businesses. Co-presenting with him today is Dr. Brittany Aguilar, our Senior Methodology Consultant. Brittany has her doctorate in business psychology and master's in industrial organizational psychology with over 10 years of experience in both corporate and academic settings. We encourage you to ask your questions via the Q&A section throughout the event today, and we'll get to them at the end of the event. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Brittany.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that introduction, and thank you everyone for being here today with us. We're happy to go on this journey to learn how to win the talent war through engagement and turnover data. So a little bit about Paul and I this afternoon, but let's get into also where we're coming from and what Kantar TNS can share with us. So for over 25 years, Kantar has focused on providing really the tools you need to create those experiences for your employees and clients to have that optimized business performance. So in addition to helping them build and sustain world-class survey experiences, we also offer consultative and research resources from the world's largest customer satisfaction benchmarking database and brand analytics research. And what that means to you is that whether you have 200 employees or 200,000 employees, really we have the experience, the measurement, reporting, and follow-up tools you need to deliver holistically for your employee and customer brand promise. And we're going to talk about how all of that comes together today to set you up for success today and in the future. So we really look to be that kind of partner for anyone looking to make a splash in the space. So in our time this afternoon, we're going to be focusing specifically on providing you with the strategy and data ammunition you need to win the talent war. Starting with, at the top of our agenda here, is that solid core. You really need to get to who you are as an organization, who are in your teams, really what are you working with? And then also, where are the chinks in your armor? Where are you needing to build those supports to make sure that your wall is strong or that your guns are loaded, to use a little bit of allusion there to our title, but really, making sure you're strong and ready to go. Once you've got all that locked and loaded, moving to the attractive promise. And this is really broadcasting that, saying we've got a great thing going on here. We need to attract and retain those best pools of talent for us because we know that's going to be the differentiator for us to be successful moving forward. Once you've invested all of that then, and you say we've got a great thing going, we're getting people in the door, we're very attractive, you want to make sure that you are proving that out time over time. So getting leader buy-in, having solid action plans, and all of that's really driven by this compelling story, by the data. So making sure that you can prove it to people who matter. putting all this together, then it's really saying that once you have an organization and a culture and a core that you can package and broadcast and share to be attractive, you're not only going to be attracting bees with honey, right, for your employees and potential recruits, but it's also going to make you more attractive to customers. So you're kind of getting two birds with one stone, more bang for your buck, to use a little bit of that language. But really coming back to the center of this is you're going to be fighting a really strategic battle, and you're not only winning the talent war, you're winning the business war, and you're winning more market share. And at the end of the day, that's really what all of our stakeholders want to see. So let's get into a little bit more of why we're here. Let's set the stage, really. So winning the talent war means you're winning key battles. And for us, that means you have a strong workforce ready to play hard and follow your leaders. And that means being aligned to engagement and really necessarily being aligned to engagement and delivering on brand promise, and all of that looks different now than it did even a few years ago. We know that at the close of 2016, the US saw the highest confidence in the economy that we've had in 9 years. You know, learning what the economic highs mean for talent turnover has been really telling even in this beginning part of 2017. People are feeling more mobile. Things that had restricted them to just holding on to any job they had, kind of holding on to a tree in a rising tide. You know, now they're seeing that it's calmed down a little bit. There's more ability to flex and move around and be more selective in their roles and in their employers. So it's even more important today to win that talent war and make sure you're getting those best ingredients in your organization. Also rising out of this, not just the economy, but new challenges in managing turnover. They have greater visibility to where they may go. LinkedIn, Glassdoor, other social media is fueling critical trends in employees and potential employees' ability to move around, to leave situations they don't see as attractive. And also, it's important to understand where this plays in engagement, which is now an even stronger driver of an employee's decision to stay or go. And it's really a defining characteristic of employers who can attract and maintain a strong workforce, especially in times of change, when they have that compelling story and that information. So it's time to realize what makes you attractive to top talent so you can win that war. And we're really going to kick off right now with that solid core, getting to the attractive promise, and closing with compelling data. So starting off with a solid core, what we really mean by that is it's code for culture. So we really want to make sure that you have a great culture and you're using it as a powerful weapon, right? So this is really your big gun. You can aim it wherever you need to, but it's not going to work unless you have the right ammunition, you've got the fuel, right? All the right parts are there to make this powerful and impactful for you. And we know through research that whether you have that locked and loaded or not, whether your culture is set or not, that's really a red flag for turnover. A weak culture really sparks turnover, and it's a signal of a weak or eroding culture, in fact. It lets other organizations, some of them maybe your competitors, know that there's blood in the water, and it can also cause your workforce, especially those who are more attractive to other organizations or workers who may have been coming to you, maybe step away or desert those battles because they're not seeing what they need coming from you. So you want to make sure that your culture is really there. So what do we need to make sure that we've got the right culture in place to have that solid core and be ready for battle? Well, you need to have a solid understanding of your current culture and where the chinks in the armor are. And just to illustrate this a little bit more of what I mean, I had a recent client really dig into their culture, really want to understand what was going on. So they launched an employee opinion survey. And what they found was that growth and development opportunities were the top driver of employee engagement. So you might think, okay, we need to go really make sure employees and leaders are understanding where development opportunities are, make more available, look into our existing programs, see if we need to tweak those. They could have launched huge initiatives into this and spent a lot of time and money down that road. when they dug deeper into what was driving growth and development opportunities and the opinions of that, the top driver of that piece was a relationship with direct supervisor. So when they kind of stepped back from that and looked further into what was creating that image of their culture, it wasn't that their growth and development opportunities were weak. It was that link in the armor wasn't strong in leaders and immediate supervisors making those opportunities apparent and attainable for employees. So that set them down a very different course of action, meaning it's important to look at how managers are communicating out. And they also, this client of mine, looked at how they were especially communicating during the onboarding process and when employees needed training. So again, really different tracks that you can take when you really understand your culture. So it's imperative that you know what you've got here at home. So how do we get to the core? How do we really measure it? And really what that looks like is getting more towards, when you're in this disruptive time, so in this time of the talent wars, you need to have a measurement strategy that can sustain you and isn't suffering through the same issues that you're going through. So learning how to leverage a solid measurement instrument and design strategy, especially, so the kind of the core of your initiatives here can get you through those challenges. And what I mean by this is a solid measurement has a reliable core measurement that tracks growth of what's most important to your organization. So again, being true to that culture, but also has the flexibility to embrace new business and cultural initiatives without abandoning strategy. So it's a twofold piece, and you need to find balance there. You need to cover all your critical points, but also not spread resources too thin. And what I mean by that is, we don't want to have wars on multiple fronts that you can't cover, well or thoroughly. You don't want to have a crumbling battle somewhere that was really important, or in the future may be very important. So some of you may have heard of these trends of continuous listening, continuous pulsing, stepping away from traditional measurement strategies or traditional, onus. So maybe thinking of who really owns measurement, who owns our culture. Is it the top leadership? Is it middle management? Is it the employee level? Where does that rest? And really what we need to know is, how do you get a measurement strategy that answers the big questions, but also includes time and space for more of that feedback from the employees to make its way into manager level decisions? And so here we've proposed surveys to measure culture that lend both a deep dive. So here I'm advocating a census, or at least a robust pulse, to make sure that you have those big questions, that you have the ammunition, right, to move things forward. And also following up with frequent communication and all that piece, because really through having this deep and robust census, it's an inclusive exercise, it's getting everyone's feedback at one time, it's engaging them, and it's an opportunity to brand your survey, to hold something up and say, what is it like to be here? What does it mean to be part of our culture? That's who's in the room, it's the brick and mortar, it's the posters on the wall, it's how people get paid, it's how people get rewarded, and also how they're asked for their feedback. So you're building those pieces of the culture even going through these exercises. And you also need to have a rich perspective, so integrating multiple data points and inputs from the employee life cycle. And this means, making sure you see the whole picture. You don't want a general on the battlefield or the chess player only looking at a piece of the board. You want them able to check in when things are good. So maybe engagement surveys that are flexible and able to be used as you need them, and also when it's bad and when it's over. So thinking about exit surveys, you need to know what pieces on the board are in jeopardy, what is safe, and what you're going to use next, right? What's in that next step in the chamber. So getting into an example here, I want to share what our clients have found is really helpful for them. Really making sure that leaders and managers have an opportunity to measure what's important to your culture. And this can be something as easy as launching their own survey through through technology that really supports that initiative. So something that's easy to use, something where they can go in, you're seeing it now, they can select what's really pertinent to me right now, right? What do I need to know today to make that strategy and honor that feedback and make it all work for me? So picking categories and items that you know are driving your culture, maybe even adding a custom item here about a recent initiative that was really important, some changes they're going through, or just seeing if they've seen improvement since the last survey. And you really get a sense of the experience that employees are having in that time period. Once you've got your survey set up, you're really ready to go out and ask people, what does it feel like to be here? Who are you? Who's really part of our culture and part of those initiatives and driving it? You want to make sure they have a great chance for feedback. So specifically, one of my clients, I was speaking with their CHRO, said to me that the biggest challenge for them in the next year, the biggest challenge against their growth strategies is going to be getting that talent in-house and making sure they stay. And to do that, they really need to understand all of the life cycle for their employee. So luckily, they followed the best practice of having some consistent items through their life cycle surveys, through those onboarding, exit, engagement surveys. They had the same engagement items. They had a few other key culture drivers. And leaders were able to go in and select, as follow-up, what was really important to them. So they created targeted action plans based on feedback. They saw that they were really missing out on here, this is an example from them of especially employees not having a healthy work environment, right? So that can be a safety issue, that can be anything you're looking for there. And so leaders developed action plans to say, how are we doing on this? Here's a few targeted things that we can get at. And they learned through checking and adjusting, taking the actions, getting people involved, and then sending out these follow-up surveys as they went. They learned how they were progressing down that path and making sure that they were really driving what was important to them. And this not only builds communication with employees, but it also drives the culture, it drives the employee engagement experience, and it contributes to intent to stay. And reduces turnover. So my client specifically saw a reduction in turnover, a reduction in accidents by launching this kind of initiative where you're getting that constant collaboration between employees and leaders. So why did we start with culture? Really, why are we getting at learning what's really important to the solid core so that you can move on from there? And that's because I think many of us have heard that old saying, culture eats strategy for lunch. So you can say we have a strategy to win the war on talent, but if you don't know what's going on with your culture, if you don't have those constant mechanisms for checking in and adjusting and measuring who you really are, you're not going to win the talent war and you're going to lose some key battles. So building from your core, right? You've amassed your fleet, you've got your weapons, and by that I mean your workforce ready to go. You need to mobilize. You need to recruit and attract in that top talent, attract those top soldiers who are going to be on the field for you. And you'll realize as we go that a lot of what is attractive to employees is attractive to clients. And that all starts with keeping your promises. So anytime you say, we've measured and we understand what is important to us, we're going to honor that, and here's what we're going to do. Every time you meet expectations, you are contributing to a great relationship, and that builds alliance and trust and support and people who are going to be willing to do what it takes to win in the end. So that's people who are coming on board who are new, that's people who've been there for a long time. They're going to see they've put their chips right in the right place, and they're going to be right there with you. To continue that promise and continue building on that culture, we must know what employees need, and we know that they need a sense of achievement and fulfillment from their roles. They need to know that they have camaraderie and meaningful relationships at work. And then this part at the end is super important, is this equity and to be treated fairly. I had a client who found that especially during times of change, and I think we're moving into this VUCA world, right, the volatile, ever-changing world that changes all around us, whether we're reacting to change or we're driving culture change to continuously get better, it's all around us. And my client found that this was experienced differently, the change in how it impacted engagement at the local versus organizational level. And so by local, I mean those individual nucleus teams and also at the org level. But across everything, as things fluctuated through the change, what they found was that engagement was the strongest predictor of intent to stay throughout that change. And as you know, when you're going through times like that, it can be hard to keep employees engaged, not only to keep performance up, but to stay attractive even when you're changing tactics, even when you're going through those changes. So how do we operationalize this? Now that we know how to measure it, how do we really deliver on this promise? Since we're bought into why this is so critical. Taking the lessons learned from our core then, it really means focusing on what matters. And if we look at this, it's really about being sticky to employees and sustainable. So you want to grab them and keep them. And that's pretty simple. That's pretty, here's our talent, we want it, or there's our talent, go get it, and let's keep that up. We've got a great thing going. So these first few bullets here, crafting an experience that draws people in and helps them do their best, that's pretty simple, right? That's really just the foundation of what's going on with every organization who's trying to succeed. But also culture building then. It's more important to realize that is a long-term initiative versus just a ramp up and fun launch. It needs to be something that works over time. For those of you who've worked in this for a while, who are seeing this and saying, yeah, I'm familiar with that, those are things that we've been doing, or you're saying, I want to get into that, I need something sustainable, I need to package what our core is and broadcast that widely, I'm talking about an employee value proposition, right? And so that is an expectation that you set with them, and then you deliver on that promise. And the best way to do that then, the same way you might approach these employee battles and business battles with these transferable principles, you're getting into advocacy, right? So the same way you're looking for feedback from clients so that you can deliver on expectations. You came into our store or you solicited our services. Did you get what you needed? Did we wow you? Did we delight the customer? You should be thinking the same way about your employees and about your talent base. And so advocacy needs to be seen as a two-way street, not just a feedback mechanism for employees giving feedback. We took the survey, that's great, nothing happened, we didn't see anything. Or we took the survey and all we got was, a soundbite from the CEO saying, thanks, we're going to do a few things, and then we don't hear anything else. You can't send an army just down a road and then tell them nothing about how to engage in what they're going to see, how you're supporting them, and keep that up. You're going to run out of material. So the life cycle then, the surveys of, how are we onboarding? How are we engaging? The action planning follow-up surveys, how are we continuing to improve? And even exit, so we had some turnover. What are we learning from that? How can we take action there as well? It becomes a lifestyle. You're checking in with employees. You're giving them these branded or consistent points where they're able to raise their voices, where they get the sense from leadership that we really care, we want to know how you're doing right now. And then work becomes a great place to work. And when employees can say this, they can say, this place is a great place to work, we know retention goes up. And we can achieve this from employees having that voice to senior leadership, and also senior leadership having a way to communicate to employees. So I recently had a client who was in the hospitality sector, and they found that these core needs of employees, right, the sense of achievement, fulfillment, camaraderie, and equality, when they identified those and had strong communications, two-way channels with employees and senior leadership, they found that retention went way up. They had almost a 20% increase over 2 years of retention, just from putting in strong communication channels about what they were already doing. So there's really a chance to make some impressive gains here. So how do we continue to dig in, right? How are we able to continue to deliver and understand what employees are saying about the core of what we're doing? And I want to share with you how we're using technology with our clients to make this happen. So we really want to, through this dashboard experience, help them see the data for what it is. So really understanding how are we aligning the experience with the expectations we're setting? Are we making that promise attractive and sticky so that our talent knows they're in the right place? And so through this, you can really get to see, what employees are thinking, and then dig into the groups. So you can see, what are disengaged employees saying? Are they having different problems or success areas than other groups? So you can take more targeted action here and deliver that promise to their doorstep, right? It doesn't get diluted in, really high level, ambiguous opportunities. It gets sent right to them, and it can make the biggest difference, and it can make a fast difference. We know in today's world, you can't let information go stale. You need to really bring it forward, and this is a good way to do that. So also getting into other demographics, are women having a different experience? Are millennials having a different experience? Is it a different shift needing some more support? So you can drill into the data and find where the issues and promises aren't looking like they're being met. So I have an example from a large retail organization where they were having churn within their organization. And by churn, I mean some turnover, yes, but also just a lot of movement in their managerial levels, in that mid-leader level. And as you can imagine, that's very expensive for the organization. Even if people aren't leaving, their talent is struggling. It is disorganized. And they're losing that knowledge capital. We talked about that relationship with senior leadership, immediate supervisors being important to employee engagement. So you can imagine if you form that bond, that buy-in, that understanding relationship with your immediate supervisor, and they leave, you may feel abandoned. You may feel like you're out on your own now, fighting those battles, and for what? Am I still aligned to this? So this client looked at churn, saw that it was hurting profits, it was increasing turnover, not only for leaders who thought they might find something better somewhere else, so they moved, and then found that that wasn't the answer after all and left, but also in the lower levels for their employees. So they really wanted to get at this. So they went out and did focus groups with these leaders who were creating most of the churn, and learned that, they really were moving for different opportunities. They were moving because different areas had better training, had better store ratings. It was about the metrics. It was about how they were being measured and how their promise was being delivered for that level of leader. I only get a bonus if these certain things are met, and these stores just weren't giving it to me no matter what I did. So they reevaluated how they let managers know they were doing a good job and where they gave support, and so kind of leveled the playing field. It became less of a driver for movement or a push out of the organization, and more of a way to engage leaders so they could be more productive and also more proactive versus reactive. So I love that example. They really made a difference for their stores, for performance. You can imagine all the ripple effects of just looking into that and making sure that you're delivering what you're espousing, especially to those certain groups who really need it. So let's get to the finish line. What's next, right? How do we bring it home? So now I'm talking about the trophy, the finish line, the new castle up on the hill once you've won the war. How are we getting leaders to get us to victory? And so this means being attractive to top talent through knowing your numbers. You've got the data that you need to tell a compelling story and get everyone kind of bought into that same lockstep, that same here's where we are, here's what we're doing, here's why. And part of that is giving your foot soldiers, giving the leaders out in the field what they need to really make a difference in that battle, really win that fight, have the tactical advantage when they need it. And that means here for our first point, letting leaders know and own the data that drives talent and external business. So again, this is going towards that, building the culture, setting the tone from the top, and making sure that you're being true to yourself. And so engagement is won and lost, in the weeds. To get this done, then it's required that management have a solid action plan that guarantees the results. So once they own it, they really need to drive the action. I think we've all seen or maybe have heard of those statistics about, what's best. Is it to ask for feedback and then do nothing? Is it best to ask for feedback and then communicate results and then do nothing, or ask for feedback, communicate results, and then take action? And where groups were asked for their feedback, told about the results, and then no action was taken, their engagement goes down even more greatly than when they're asked for feedback and nothing is done. Because again, that promise is in place, the expectation is there. So action here is paramount. And not only action, but that step further of making sure that they're seeing why. We asked for feedback, that's great, honoring the employee experience, fabulous, we're having a good time at work, but is that really netting us anything? Everyone wants to see those dollar signs coming in the door so that once you've won the talent war, they have job security, right? So we need to tie it to hard metrics to really sell this compelling story with different types of data. And that same client that I mentioned a moment ago who had the churn, he's working really hard to integrate data, not only from HR, so employee data that we've been discussing, along with performance metrics of managers and employees and hire dates and every number you can attach to employee, but also integrating that with business data and doing those linkage analyses, because even technology's ability to code data, to house data, to create those bases where everything can live in one, he's saying if we aren't learning how to own this data and use it, in 5 years, it will be so easy to bring it all together. Who will, right? So if you're sitting there as an HR professional today or a practitioner and thinking this is my data, if you aren't using it to its fullest extent, it may not always be your data. It may live somewhere else. So we need to learn how to win the talent war with the power and weapons that we have today. And that just means strengthening your value chain from your people investments. So you've got a compelling story, you say we need to invest here, we need to do these things. You need to draw the line all the way to the end of the story to the dollars coming in the door, right? So let's talk through a little bit more of what this means. So it means focusing on what is driving those data points and dollar signs coming through the door. So this is kind of where, you spot the trends before they strike. A strategic leader who's out to really win the war and capitalize on battles is going to see things coming down the road. So through knowing your core, through measuring it, through not only putting out the promises, but owning up to them, you know what's going on in your talent pipeline and your customer pipeline. So you can kind of see, see the whole battlefield, and you really get a strategic advantage when you can spot those trends. And to do that, to keep on top of that, this is where we really get into continuous listening, continuous improvement, all these buzzwords, driving culture, driving action, all these things are really important to us now. But it all comes down to continuous action. And so what we're seeing in these bullet points here under measuring and supporting about keeping the rhythm going, planning, tracking, and taking action that are key differentiators for you, and aligning all of those resources and outcomes to make sure that you're connecting all the dots. These are all best practices for organizations to organize, right, and then materialize the action. So I want us all to be really conscientious that as we're hearing buzzwords and seeing new opportunities for how these things will happen through things like continuous listening and continuous improvement, these check and adjust lifestyles or different management tactics, no matter what you're doing, at the end of the day, it all comes down to you need to survey and communicate at the pace and frequency with which you take action. So if you've got a great technology in place, if you've got a really cool system for getting employee feedback rapidly, you do weekly surveys or quarterly surveys, or you're sampling your population, if you are not matching that step for step with action, you're not honoring that feedback and you're digging yourself a hole, like I mentioned earlier, where they're getting the feedback and they're getting the communication, but they're not seeing action. And so you're really telling them that it's either not important or you can't deliver on that. So why would they continue to give you honest and full feedback? So it's better to get leaders on board and enable them as champions to take action. So how have we done that successfully with our clients? I want to get a look now at how we get leaders successfully in our experience to own and understand data and see where to drive action. So like a scout before a battle, going into reading the landscape, understanding the situation, knowing the best plays, and getting those plans together to really feel empowered and equipped, right, to win it faster and more impactfully. So I want to share an example now, if I can, of what this looks like for leaders, what they're going to see from the feedback from their employees. So right now we're looking at impact report, and that automatically says to me as a leader, I need to pay attention to this to have those outcomes that I want. So let's look at where things are working and where they aren't, right? So where our weapons are really working, or where we have, again, chinks in the armor, where our culture could stand a little refresh and a little attention. So we move here with this data, to be compelling, and I'm so excited about this, is moving from just being descriptive, telling them what's going on, saying, oh, well, the enemy's at the gates, or, the British are coming. That's awesome. What does that mean? How do we take action on that? Is that normal? Have they always been at the gates? Do the British just hang out outside of Boston? Who knows, right? So we go from descriptive into diagnostic. So, how is this good? Is this normal? How do we need to be thinking about this differently? And are we ready, right? So you can look at your team, your data compared to the external norm to know if this is normal. Do you need to really improve? Are there red flags going up? And you can see in our example, yes, certainly, especially where they have opportunities. It's a big problem. They need support. So even senior leadership or higher levels in the organization can look at this and say they need help. They really need, especially listening to ideas and concerns. They could really stand to get some additional support and materials, whatever they need. You can also compare to the company total or any organization level that really is going to be telling for you and say, how are we doing internally, right? So not even just company total, but best in class. And by that, I mean, what does good look like in our organization? What is that top 90 or 80 to 90th percentile or 90 to 100th percentile? If it's working in our organization, how is it working? What is working for them? That way I know it's not only ambitious for me, it's still a best in class, but it's attainable, right? Whatever secret sauce they have, I can get some too. And so this gets you quicker to the draw even more so, because you're not saying, I'm a lowly manager somewhere in Nebraska trying to do something really cool. What is Google doing today? Because you don't have the same resources as Google, but you can look and say, who else in my company is getting this done and how are they doing it? And how do I compare? So you can take those best practices and really make a difference, from day one. You don't have to ramp up to something that doesn't naturally occur in your environment. And then even shortening that cycle to action further, we're getting to predictive pieces. So we're saying, if you want a stronger culture, if you want to take action that's going to win you these battles, it's going to tell your employees that you hear them, that you can deliver on that promise, and also set you up to be more attractive to future talent and keep maybe those people who have one foot out the door, right? So these messages are powerful. You want to make an impact to engagement. So we're going to tell you where that is extreme, high, medium, low, tell you where to point those big guns. Say what is really going to make the first difference, the second difference, the third level difference, so that you're not spending time, let's say, organizing the china cabinet when your roof is on fire, right? You need to be putting your efforts where they're going to make the most difference today. So that's really how we bring leaders into understanding their data. Next then is, how are they using that data to take action? How is the rubber meeting the road here? So our clients have really been instrumental in developing this platform where leaders can go in and in a structured way bring their data forward through to telling the story, to delivering on the promise, and saying, okay, from my strengths and opportunities for engagement to improve or maintain it, these are what I need to focus on. So it's driven directly from the data. I'm going to tell this compelling story and say, I know when I'm starting it, I know when I'm ending it, I know what the steps are, I know what my challenges could be from keeping me from doing this. You're really being considerate and thinking of the whole story through, right? So making sure that action doesn't get left by the wayside and doesn't stop at planning. They can pick things that help them build that. So Center for Creative Leadership helps us. Other providers have their own best practices. All organizations have their own best practices. You really want to make sure in any capacity, any strategy you take, that leaders have access to what works well here. Also important, what we're seeing now is, what does it look like from a higher level? What are people taking action on? We've got a corporate culture, not just your team culture, right? They all flow into each other. So we want to see where people are taking action, how it's going, and where do they need support. So you can dig in and see what's working where and offer those hands up, right? Offer that, let's pull you up out of where you're struggling and get everyone on board. Because employees, I tell you what, talent is not only looking at their direct leader, that's going to be really telling, but they're looking around the organization to see, are other parts being strong? Are other places crumbling? Do I need to stay in this organization? Maybe it's just a matter of churn. Maybe I just shift to another team. Or do I really need to leave to find what's attractive to me, to find what will fulfill me, right? So we want to make sure that they can see that everyone's on board and that not only does their immediate leader understand this, but senior leadership is bought into those actions as well. And by the way, senior leadership, right, tone from the top, needs to continue, as we mentioned before, that continuous pattern of communication and really letting people know that we're all in this together. So this has been a lot of investment from the beginning, from understanding how you're going to measure, from understanding what's important to employees, and then how do we tell employees what we're doing, who's involved in that. We've mentioned lots of stakeholders, lots of activities you're involved in, lots of resources. This is an expensive war. No one said it would be cheap. No one said it would be fast. No one said it would end in a clean way, right? This is an ongoing lifestyle that you're adopting. But really, when we're getting to it all, it's what is the big payoff? What is the investment? We've said this last bullet point is better yet. Everything you're doing to win the war for talent, even though it's expensive, is going to also help you win the war with customers. And this is where I'm so pleased to hand the speaking over to my counterpart, Paul, who's going to tell us about his experiences with customers, his clients, who've found that while they're investing in all of this, it's not all lost, right? It's not in vain. It's really not only winning them talent, but it's winning them revenue. So thank you so much, Paul. I'm excited to hear your examples.
Yeah, thank you, Brittany, and that's some great information for everybody. So thank you for sharing all of that. So we have a few minutes left here, so I'd like to take a few minutes just to talk about some of my experiences with some large clients who have really found value through this process. Before jumping into that, though, I guess I just want to take a moment to kind of recap why bother. So we're talking about employee engagement and exit data as being a great solid core to help drive our promise and then give us some compelling data. And that sounds good, but in the end, what does it really mean at the end of the day? And what our clients find most often that it means is that you're building better and deeper relationships with your customers. You're reducing costs, which we're all about keeping operational costs down, increasing productivity of workers, reducing absenteeism, increasing the customer or the spend per customer. Now, most people don't think about it that way, but that's a metric tied to both of these things that we've been talking about, in addition to other things like reducing waste, ramping up innovation within your organization so that you can continue to compete on an ongoing basis, and really then solidifying brand equity. So these are a lot of different things that getting good data and fulfilling that attractive promise to employees is really going to pay off in the long run. The employee engagement and exit data really isn't about favorability. It's about business growth and profit margins at the end of the day, because that's really what we're all looking for. Running these programs shouldn't be just a checklist item. We want to really see, where does this pay off for us as an organization once we do the things that Brittany described. So keeping in the weaponizing theme, employee engagement surveys are a good weapon, but action planning is really kind of the ammunition. The weapon without the ammunition doesn't really do you any good, but once you load it up, there's a lot you can achieve. And really, one of the key things to think about as well is planning your data collection in a way so that you're thinking about the end in mind. It's important to think about, and we saw a couple Venn diagrams in Brittany's presentation, which were the overlapping circles showing where the value is and the connection between the different measurements. Employee engagement overlaps with customer experience, and those two things both overlap with your brand promise and how people view your brand. So employee engagement and exit data are not just information in a vacuum. It really does tie into a variety of other things that you can tangibly measure to show the value of why you want to weaponize your system and make it as good as it can be. I was doing a cursory look at some statistics in preparation for today's webinar, and some of the things that I had run across that I thought were interesting to share tied into the whys to employee engagement and what does this all mean at the end of the day in terms of compelling data. There's an organization that found that 10%, or for every 10% improvement in their engagement score, they were decreasing the employee's probability of departure by 9%. Now, I don't know everybody's size that's on this webinar in terms of the number of people and the number of churn and turnover you have, but if you apply that to yourself and you're a fairly large organization, that's pretty compelling information. In addition, other research shows that the top 25% of teams perform with 41% fewer quality defects than the bottom 25%. So when you're looking at driving employee engagement and getting your employees to really engage in their work and provide the best possible product and brand experience for your clients, we're all about fewer defects, whether you're in manufacturing or whether you're in healthcare or whether you're in a service organization. It's all about keeping the defects down so that we can drive that brand experience and the customer experience, which is tied into employee engagement. Just another factoid to throw out there. In our organization, on our linkage analysis, we reconfirmed that improving the experience of our people both directly drives profitable growth and indirectly drives it via improving customer relationship strength. So a lot of times organizations, unfortunately, view employee engagement and that data in a vacuum, that it's just all about those numbers. And it's really about the broader linkage to the other parts of the metrics that you measure within your organization. So one of the clients that I work with was a large healthcare organization with over 100,000 people in it. And we built a good solid core for them with a great survey that was really measuring the predictors of employee engagement. They also used that as a linkage to their employee exit survey so that it was a direct link in terms of the content so that we could see how it changes the experience of the employee over time. And some of the key findings that came out of that was that associate engagement, in their case employee engagement, is strongly correlated with their patient experience and associate loyalty. the turnover that they found before they started measuring engagement and action planning upon it decreased by over 10% within the first year. So by taking the time to develop that solid core and then develop good, solid action plans as a result, they were able to drive not only better engagement within the organization, but reduce turnover and increase the customer, or in their case, patient experience on the healthcare side. And as those things are all tied together, obviously they're driving financial metrics as well. And we did some deeper analysis statistically on that, and we're able to show and prove out that for every ratchet or increase in employee engagement, they were also ratcheting up their financial metrics as well, and really also driving down the patient experience defects. And in the healthcare organization, you know, those things are affecting your health, so you want to keep those to a bare minimum. They also found that the net promoter for the employee side was also tied to the net promoter on the patient side of things. So the important thing to remember here, as Brittany had shown throughout her presentation, is that all these things are tied together. So again, it's important to know how your engagement data and your exit data, why people are leaving, is tied to the other metrics, and really helps you to action plan in the places that are really going to drive value, not only on the dashboard that you may have in the way that you measure your information, but basically the bottom line. You know, we all want to keep the cost down and the profit up, and really our experience has been that these things will really help drive that. And I did have one other quick experience with a large service company that's global, and from that experience we found that the key drivers for consumers choosing this company over other brands were trust, being made to feel like a valued customer, leadership, and meeting consumer needs. So having friendly and knowledgeable and engaged staff was directly feeding into the business, or building associations of trust and being valued as a customer. And knowing that those things are tied to your financial metrics and tied into employee engagement, you know, these are really compelling reasons to take the time to really plan out and understand what you're measuring and why you're measuring, and, you know, really selling that to the organization. Because at the end of the day, tying back to what I was saying in the beginning, you can have the best weapon in the world, but if it's not loaded up and you're not using it properly, you're not going to get the value add. So by really taking the time to examine your program and build it appropriately, and then measure it to make sure that you're getting the value, you can really, at the end of the day, affect your bottom line. So, Brittany, anything to add?
Thank you, Paul. I think you did a great job explaining kind of how this all ties together, and thinking about not only, you know, what is the payoff at the end, and how does that echo through what we look at when we think about engagement and employee measurement, and also why people are leaving, you know, why are they going out the door, to really get a sense of how are we doing in the talent war, right? How are we doing in the, not only the war for talent, but the war for market share, and being a major player in our industry, right? Because that's at the end of the day why we want to win the war on talent. So if you enjoyed what we talked about today, if you have any more questions or want to learn more from our deep experience and really great allusions to different imagery, we have some upcoming events, such as Catch Me If You Can, happening, or tomorrow in New York. So that's an engagement dinner. We also have a client panel coming up in California, in San Francisco, on July 24th. And I'll be leading that as well with some of our favorite clients. We've got Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Compass Group, and Hearthside Foods. So lots of different sized organizations, different industries, different focus, but all with great stories. So we're always adding more events, more opportunities to connect. If you'd like to stay in touch with us, please reach out at the information you see below to stay in touch and get more information. So with that, I'll say thank you on behalf of myself and Paul and our presenters today, our partners with HR.com, And we'd like to open it up to any questions if we've received those during our presentation and we weren't able to answer in the moment.
All right, thanks, Brittany. Scott Spade here again. I'm going to read off a few of the questions here with whatever time we have left. First question that we have, what surveys does Kantar TNS use to collect and link the data, and how do you organize this collection across your different teams?
Okay, it sounds like there were questions in there. I'm sorry?
Across their teams.
Yeah, can you repeat that one more time for me? I'm so sorry. I just need to hear it one more time.
Okay. What surveys does Kantar TNS use to collect and link the data? And how do you organize the collection of the data across our various teams? I think what they're trying to get at there is they may have one team doing exit surveys, another team, doing the engagement survey.
Oh, that totally makes sense. Okay. Paul, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to field that one?
Yeah, I'll start, but you can tag in. Certainly, we offer a variety of surveys within our suite. We have an on-demand suite that offers good core content for exit surveys, engagement surveys, onboarding, customer experience, and manager feedback at the core. So it's a great tool without having to do a lot of content development that you can jump right in to be able to do that linkage. The one thing that I did want to add to that as well is it's helpful, and we find that it's been my experience with customers, clients, that things are done kind of in silos, and it's important to have continuity in those measures. So our on-demand suite helps you to keep that continuity, but if you're doing your own individual surveys, it's important to have somebody that cross-pollinates across those teams, because at the end of the day, it's really important to strategically plan your measures so that at the end of the day, you're measuring things at a level and in a way that you're keeping the end in mind so that you can link that information together later. Because if you don't collect it right first, it's going to be a challenge later on when you're trying to make that linkage analysis work. Anything you would add, Brittany?
Not much. The only thing I would say that is, in addition to looking through different surveys themselves, also knowing if you have any indexes built into them that so for example, an engagement index to measure, not only how favorably people are feeling about that specific topic, but also, what does that say about their experience? Are they engaged? Are they disengaged? And just making sure you have those common threads throughout so you can track how engaged or disengaged, or what was disengaging at the time of maybe, their departure. So in an exit survey, having those same items consistently throughout so you can keep track of how you're doing on delivering on those promises. And winning the battle with them or losing the battle can tell you a lot.
Thanks, Brittany. Paul, I think you had a question that you saw in there that you wanted to answer, or...
Yeah, there was one person who asked, what kinds of questions would you include in the complementary measures like engagement and onboarding or exit surveys?
Brittany, you want to start that one off?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sorry, I thought you said Paul wanted to answer that one. So really similar to what I just shared. So great question. Really making sure, I'd say anything that you say is paramount to your organization. So I have one client who is in manufacturing and distribution, and they always say, our motto is safety first. And so not only do they put safety items at the beginning of their survey and at the beginning of their results, and it kicks off every kind of follow-up initiative and communication, but they include it in exit surveys, they include it in onboarding, they include it in all follow-up communications and measures. So that's something that they use as a golden thread throughout. Also, I would say, just core across industries, across groups, and maturity levels with surveying, I'd say include your engagement measure or your satisfaction measure, net promoter, whatever is driving your measure of success for how well your culture is doing. I'd say include that there. And then, anything else that you are specifically looking to take action on. So if you have an improvement area, I'd say keep that top of mind, keep that in focus during a period of time. Maybe everyone who exits during that 6 months that you're really working on X, Y, or Z initiative, have those questions in their exit survey as well, so you can see how you're doing on those and if that was a driver or a catalyst for them to leave.
All right, thanks, Brittany. I'll wrap it up here and hand it back to HR.com. Just as a reminder, you can actually register for a free trial of the on-demand survey suite that you saw a couple glimpses of here at www.ondemandsurveys.com. You'll see that in your chat panel. So feel free to jump on over and register for your 60-day trial. So with that, I'll thank everybody for attending today and hand it back over to Kathy at HR.com.
Well, thank you so much to Kantar TNS for presenting this very informative webcast today. Just a few reminders for the attendees. If you would like to view this webcast again, the archive recording will be available for up to 7 days. The slides are also available to download. All webcast credits are stored in your HR.com account. Watch for your email to arrive within 1 to 2 business days. It will contain the certification credit information. Your feedback is important to us. Please take a moment and fill out the exit survey that will appear on your screen. This concludes today's webcast. Enjoy the rest of your day.